Okay, it's time to start importing data into your database. And you can do that fairly easily in Access. Basically, you go to the Home ribbon, or you go to the ribbon and click on External Data. And here you've got a number of different options for importing data, and Excel is one of them. So we'll go ahead and use that Excel option, and it's going to ask, well, where is this file that you want to import? And so I'll open it up. Now, it's not a bad idea to go over to the Excel app itself and just take a look at what we have. So we've got the budget sales. That's a pretty simple table here. So we'll go ahead and import that table first. And as you might imagine, that's what each store's monthly sales budget is. So that might be useful when it comes time to see how did our stores do versus budget. All right, so we'll go back to Access, and we found the file. I want to import my source data into a new table in my database. So I've got a size fish database up here. I don't have anything in it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and find that table, which happens to be the first worksheet in my Excel file, budget sales. And it's got the 4 columns. If we go back, the first row here does have field names for each of the columns. So we'll go ahead and say, yeah, the first row contains column headings. Access will turn those into my field names. And then I can just double check. My store code is a text field. My year is a double. Well, we can use year for calculations, so let's make that an integer. Month is going to be an integer as well. And then our monthly sales budget is a currency amount, and that's fine. Our sales budget is in dollars. So we can click Next. Access likes to add a primary key. We are not going to do that. In this case, you can see we have duplicated store codes. We also have duplicate years. All the years are the exact same, and the months repeat. So we can't use any of those individual fields to find a single record. Remember, primary key means a unique identifier. So in order for me to find one store's monthly sales budget for a single month, I need to know the store, the year, and the month, so I can get to that sales budget number. So for now, I'll just put no primary key. We know how to do that once we get into design mode, and we're going to tweak this file once we've imported it anyway, because Access defaults to making all of our text fields gigantic, so we're going to skinny those down. And you can see here as we scroll from top to bottom in our store codes, they're all 4 characters, so we're going to stick with that once we get into the design mode. So it clicks Next. Access asks, do we want to give this table a name? We'll say sure. We'll go ahead and keep it with the budget sales name that we got, and we click Finish. We don't need to save the import steps because this is a one-time only thing. So now we've got our table. Sure enough, there it is. I'm going to go into design mode, or design view, and I'm going to change that text length to 4 characters, and then go back to my datasheet view. And Access is going to warn me, well, first of all, I have to save any changes when I change the design. So I changed the design of the field size here. Yes, I'll save it. Access also warns me when I change the length of a field, especially if I shorten it, you may lose some data. Well, we already scanned that table and saw all the fields are 4 characters, so we're fine. Yes, we'll save it. Everything looks good, but we still need to create our primary key. So let's go back here, and you'll recall that we needed to know all 3 of these. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and highlight all 3 just by holding the Shift key down, going down to month, and then clicking again with my mouse and selecting primary key, and you'll see that Access has now made all three of those fields combined my primary key. Now you can select multiple field names your own way. You can use the shift and the arrow keys. So there are lots of different ways to do anything in Windows. The way I'll show you is one way, but feel free to use whatever other way you use and are comfortable with. Alright, so now I go back to datasheet view. Yes, I have to save the table. And you can see here I have the table, I've got my keys. Now what would have happened, for example, if I decided just to make my store code the primary key? Alright, so I've got my store code. We're used to seeing the first field being our primary key. So I click on primary key. Access doesn't complain yet because it doesn't know how big our table is. It could have 8 million rows in it, and it would be problematic to try and save it every time we change or try and evaluate any change we make until we're trying to save it. So we'll go back to design mode. It saves the table, and now it tells me the change I just requested is not successful because it would create duplicate values in my primary key, in the index primary key or the relationship. And we know that the primary key needs to be a unique identifier. So we'll click OK. Access tells us again that we got an error, so we enter through that, fix that, make that our primary key. Yes, we have to save the table, and now we're happy. So here we have our first table imported. Okay, we've imported a table that was relatively straightforward. Let's go ahead and take a look at another table that we can import. So we'll flip back over to our Excel source data. We've got our budget sales there. We've got some other tabs. Let's go to the purchases miscellaneous tab. And here you can see we've got the purchases for our phone and utilities, truck gasoline, the statement that comes in periodically, truck service statement that comes in. So you can see we've got a payment for different stores once a month, or just recurring miscellaneous expenses, I guess. But if you think about the class diagram and the REA model approach to building a class diagram, you can see this covers both the purchasing activity, purchase order, purchase date, vendor number, who ordered the goods or the service, the expense amount, the reason, the store code. And then we also have associated with that the check number, check date, CD employee, cash disbursement employee, and the account. Since we want to put these into two separate tables, and we know our cash disbursements is going to be just a portion of our overall purchases, you can see here we don't have a cash disbursement for every purchase that we've made yet. We haven't paid some of them yet. So we need to actually copy this purchase miscellaneous tab, and you can just right click on the tab, say move or copy. I'm going to create a copy. I'm going to put it right after purchases miscellaneous, or right before in this case. And I will change the name of it to cash disbursements miscellaneous, and then get rid of that 2. When I first copied it, Excel gave it the exact same name and just appended it with a 2. So now I have a cash disbursements miscellaneous table, and I've got a purchases miscellaneous table. Now they both look the exact same right now. But what I can do with the purchases table, I know I want to keep my check number as a link between my purchase, my original purchase, and then my cash disbursement payment. But I can get rid of these columns. I'll just highlight them all. Press Control minus, and away they go. Over on the other side, I will do my cash disbursements, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of any of the purchase order lines that don't have a payment for them. So you can highlight those rows any way you'd like. This table already happened to be in order of payments, so those purchase orders that had not been paid were at the bottom, but you could use a sort process to do that as well. So I highlight all the rows, control minus, and those are gone. I keep the data that's existing, those first 35 rows of data. And now I can also take a look at which fields I want. Well, I'll obviously want my check number, my check date, my cash disbursement employee, and the account number. But I'll probably want my amount as well, and the vendor I'm paying. So I can keep those. I'll just get rid of everything else. So the purchase order number and date are gone. The ordering employee is gone. The reason for the purchase order is gone. And the purchasing store code is gone. So at this point, I can save my Excel spreadsheet and go back to Access and start importing. So I'm going to go to Excel, find my fish store, fish data, import my source data into a new table. And the first table I'll pick is my miscellaneous purchases. So that's the table we originally had, but then we got rid of the cash disbursement column. So we click next. We've got purchase order number, purchase order date, vendor number, etc., etc., etc. Let's go ahead and keep that. Our first row contains column heading. Next, purchase order number is text, purchase order date, date time, vendor number. And you'll notice the date time shows up as an odd number. That's just the way Excel stores dates internally. Access shows us that internal storage mechanism, but when we import it in Access, it'll show up as a date just like we would expect. The vendor is a text field, the ordering employee is a text field, expense amount is a currency amount, the reason is a text field, store code is a text field, and the check number is a text field. So we click next. We're going to add our own primary key, and we're going to use purchase order number, which is fine. Click next, and we'll call this purchases miscellaneous, and finish. We won't save the steps, and we now have a nice purchases table, and we can go back into design mode and change those field lengths again to an appropriate length. So our purchase order number is 6 characters long, but we should probably go ahead and make it 10 just to allow for some growth. We've got the purchase date, which won't have a length. The vendor ID, well, let's go back, save it. And it looks like we have a 6 character with that underscore. Again, let's go ahead and give it some room for growth. So we'll make that 8 characters. And so on down the line. The ordering employee number. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8. Again, let's leave some room for growth, and we'll make it 10. And you can see it's warning us as we shorten the length of some of these fields that we may lose some data, which is why we always want to scan the field before we make a recommendation for the field length. So here's truck gasoline all stores, which is our longest field apparently. And if we are to look at that, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 25 characters. So that seems like a reasonable length to make a field. So let's go back Make our reason 25 characters. The store code is a 4-digit field. So we can go back there, take a look. And then our check number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, we can leave a little room for growth there and make that 8. All right, so we've got our purchases miscellaneous, and then we'll go through the exact same process for the new cash disbursements miscellaneous table we just made. So we'll go ahead and get external data from Excel, find our size fish data file, import the data into a new table, and we're going to select cash disbursements miscellaneous. It's showing us the fields and some sample data from that. Our first row contains the column headings. Vendor number is a text field, expense amount, currency, check number, text field, check date, date and time, cash disbursement employee, and the account number, which is a 5-digit account number we have here. And we do want to verify sometimes on an account number, it will Access would try to make that a numeric field. I think it recognizes with the leading 0 that we would like it to be a text field, so it's going to keep it a text field. Choose my own primary key. Let's make the check number our primary key. That's going to be different for every payment, every cash disbursement that we make. So cash disbursement miscellaneous is fine. And we close it, and now we can go into design mode. The first thing we'll do is take our primary key and move it to become our first field. Taking vendor and moving it down below check number, and then the expense amount. And traditionally you'll find an amount field to be your last field, so that might be something you can do. And again, for data storage purposes, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, although for large data tables you do want that key field, the primary key, to be the leftmost field. So now we've got our check number, what vendor it goes to, what the check date is, who the cash disbursement employee was, and so forth. So let's see, check number, I think we decided to make 8. And here's where a database analyst or someone managing the data dictionary would be able to tell anybody that wants to put a check number for cash disbursements in their database table needs to make it 8 characters to keep it consistent around the organization. Vendor number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We decided to leave some room for growth, so we'll make that 8. Check date and times, cash disbursement employee, 8. I think we may have left room for 10. The account number is a 5-digit text field, and then we have the expense amount. So now we go back, take a look, and there we have everything. All right, so importing 2 tables, 2 access tables from one Excel worksheet. You'll need to do the same type of thing where you have a table with some type image data. For example, a sales order that may have multiple items in it. So you would create a sales order table and then a sales order, say, fish linking table so that you can create, so that you can normalize your table layouts. Anyway, hope this helps you go to work on getting your tables organized and set up in your Access database. And we'll look at developing queries for the tables existing in the database next.